Joining us for this segment, we have Katrina Huff Larmond. She is
Yes.
not only a Randolph Town Councilor, she's been a councilor, I think, for 6 years,
Mhm.
going on 6 years, and she is also a candidate for state Senate. Now, the Senate district that she's running for is going to soon to be the former second Plymouth and Bristol district, which is now going to be called the new District 34. Katrina, welcome to the program.
Thank you, Kevin. Thank you for the invitation. I appreciate it.
You got it. So for folks who may or may not know who you are, give us just a little bit of a background on yourself, please.
Absolutely. You already touched on the fact that currently I am a Randolph counselor, and I've been in office since 2015. Actually, the first woman of color that has ever sat in that seat. And then in 2019, I was the first woman to be vice president of the council. So, so I've been doing that. I also wear a hat. I'm a clinical social worker. So I've been working with individuals for many, many years on working around issues that I see that are part of our societal issues, which is actually what motivated me, along with being a counselor, what motivated me to run for state Senate. Understanding the issues, seeing the issues, and indirectly or directly having to become really involved in some of the societal issues.
If you will, talk to me about some of the things that you've been able to do serving as a Randolph Town Councilor.
Absolutely. That has been the best learning curve, if I may say, of my whole career. And making decisions. I call it being at the table, having the opportunity to be at the table and make some of these decisions, even if the orders that I put forward or the orders that I believe in, even if they do not, even if they're not voted on, just for them to be heard, I think is really important. So some of the work that I have done have definitely been vote by mail. In 2020, definitely we had vote by mail, and it was such a wonderful turnout. Before we received the word from federally that vote by mail will happen again, we put together an order that I was also an author on to make sure, regardless of what is said, that the town will still do exercise vote by mail, and understanding that this is really important. This is the largest turnout that we have had. So that is something that I have done. I have worked with the town manager in making sure that, Randolph is a majority minority town. So the largest language that is spoken, or one of them is Haitian Creole, the other Vietnamese. And then we have a population of Spanish-speaking residents. So with all important, vital information coming out of town hall, really understanding, especially during COVID. During COVID, it was very important for information coming out of town hall to be in multiple languages. So that was a huge push that I was really involved in, to make sure that all of our residents had the right to understand the information that was important to keep them alive. The last one I will mention is, speaking of a majority minority town, I could go on and on, but this last one that I could mention is speaking of COVID. Again, Randolph being a majority minority town, what we found with COVID is that communities of color were high risk. And knowing communities of color were high risk, and Randolph was number 3 in the state, with numbers being extremely high, we still did not have a test center, which we thought was pretty dangerous in our town. So part of my work was to make sure that we fought for a test center. And some of that was, connecting with as many people we can on the state level, on the federal level, to have our voices heard that we need a test center. But the other part of that was, making sure that we could put some sort of programming together to inform our residents of what does COVID mean? Why is COVID dangerous? What are the protections that you need in order for this town that is high risk, number 3 in the state, to be protected? And I was really a huge part of making sure that Randolph had the right resources and was advocating for the right resources so we could protect ourselves, and with our voices being heard and really fighting for what was right for us, we finally did get a testing center, and now we have testing center, and we have COVID vaccines, and we have lots of literature and we have equity COVID meetings. Congresswoman Presley herself came to town and said Randolph is a role model for other towns. So now we have what we need, and we're not stopping. We're still pushing for equity around COVID. But that's definitely one of the opportunities I had to really push for what was needed in Randolph to protect our residents.
In your wildest dream, when you ran for town council in 2015, did you ever imagine that you would be, governing during a pandemic? Did it ever come to mind?
Absolutely not. It was not a thought about anything about a pandemic, it wasn't, but we had to shift and make it work and make sure that we could govern our town and the residents, constituents during a pandemic, just as if we can when we weren't in a pandemic. There was lots of talk around workers who had to continue to be present. And recently I was having a conversation with one of my colleagues who, town council, and we talked about how we had to be present, how you can't shut down the town. We still have to make decisions on, whether it's roads or the budget, whatever's going on, we still had to be extremely present, just had to be comfortable with pivoting and doing it a different way. But no, to answer your question, I had no idea this will be part of how I would be governing anything in my life.
If folks are just tuning in, we are speaking with Katrina Huff Larmond, and she is a candidate for state senator. I will ask you, Katrina, what went into deciding to run for state senate, and why do you feel that it's time that this new district, should have a progressive state senator?
Absolutely. Thank you for that question. To answer the first question, I kind of, being at the table as a town councilor and recognizing the need at the local level, which is extremely important level. Like they said, all politics is local, right? Mm-hmm. I also realized with the vote by mail was something that went through my head. Now, I want to say that although I helped author that ordinance, it didn't pass. And that was saddened to me. I was really sad about that, because it made me think that if it did not come from higher level, there will definitely have been some, in my opinion, voter suppression happening. So it made me worry about and think about, what else could be done. So that was part of my decision. Like, I understand that it's important for me to be at the table locally. I think it's also important for me to be at the table, or individuals who think like me to be at the table on the state level as well. So that was part of my decision, definitely saying you need to also be visible at another level. People's voices need to be heard, because part of my campaign is I don't want to go to the Senate alone. I want to bring you to the Senate. I want to bring your voices to the Senate. And I truly believe that as a social worker, right? Like that's part of what we believe in, working with people collaboratively so all voices could be heard. So it's not far off from who I am and what I do, collaborating with constituents to bring all voices to the table. And so that has been like my push when I go and have these conversations. I want to bring all voices to the table. It's important for every voice to be heard. And that was something that I definitely learned when that ordinance was voted down, that although I want all voices to be heard, not everyone want all voices to be heard. And that saddens me. And so what do you do about that? And as for the district, I worked really hard in this whole redistricting process. I've been part of the Unity Table, ACLU. I've had 9 p.m. phone calls with individuals and trying to figure out what makes sense. How could we develop some of these districts that that are around equity and equality? Because currently, that's not the case. And especially on the South Shore, that was not the case. So worked really hard to try to develop a district that was a majority minority district that was inclusive of the South Shore. So this District 34, as you mentioned, is Randolph, Brockton, East Bridgewater, Whitman, Hanson, Halifax, and Halifax. So at least there's an opportunity to have some progressive individual in this district. And that's important. That's important for us, to anyone who will have an interest in running for office, to at least have an opportunity. And that's what it's all about for me, an opportunity. It's interesting, even getting signatures. I appreciate many individuals when their response to my plea for them to sign my nomination papers are, I think everyone should have an opportunity to at least be on the ballot. And I could really appreciate, and I've received that from both sides. So I could really appreciate that.
If you will, talk to me about your time serving as a Randolph Town Council. How do you feel that helps you to be able to better understand the district, and because I think that the needs are going to differ depending whether you're going to Brockton, you're talking about a city of over 100,000 people, to smaller communities like Whitman and Hanson, where you have between 14 and 16,000 people. Again, having an idea of serving as a town councilor. Talk to me how that helps you.
So Randolph, when we were doing redistricting, we purposely were working with Randolph and Brockton and wondering about other towns and cities, Stoughton, Canton, Milton. We were working with those, but we definitely were working with Randolph and Brockton coming together, because we know demographically, Randolph and Brockton have some of very similar needs. When we're talking about COVID, they went through some of the same issues of being number 2 or number 4. Because I know we were number 3 and they were either ahead of us or right behind us, of high risk of COVID cases. And we understand the languages. There's a number of different languages in Brockton, just as there's a number of different languages here in Randolph, the immigration population. So we have so much in common. So I feel really comfortable with connecting with Brockton and understanding that we could, we have that in common. But I would say with the other towns, the other reason why I feel really comfortable with that, as I mentioned, I'm a clinical social worker. Maybe I just said social worker, but I'm a clinical social worker. So I do a lot of mental health work. And I have been in every single town that is in the district and working with individual mental health cases. So that is universal. And that's also another priority of mine is understanding mental health care, understanding substance use, and how could we find policies so we can better serve these communities when they're dealing with these different issues. So being a town councilor has been helpful because it has given me the opportunity to be at the table on a local level and understand some of the culture, understand some of what it feels like to be in politics and work with the people. But I'll tell you, Kevin, what has really been more of a motivator to me is my profession of understanding that the issues that are in our society that need to be focused on, I need two vehicles. I need the vehicle of wearing my social work hat, and I need the vehicle of the experience of being a town councilor. And both of those coming together has really given me great insight on my focus on what I should focus on as a state senator.
I would ask you, and you gave me a nice segue there. What do you feel are the key issues, not only in this race that the campaign is going to focus on, but issues that are going to resonate with the voters, the residents across District 34?
Oh, definitely. People feel like we're out of COVID, but we're still in COVID, right? You and I are meeting virtually. Although now we're figured this whole virtual thing is, we can probably do this after COVID because it's convenient.
Yes.
But how could that work for us? ARPA monies that are coming, how does each town receive funding and how to use those fundings to recover from COVID? Small businesses, every single town is trying to figure out, because of COVID, we can keep going back to COVID, actually. Because of COVID, many of these businesses went out of business. And so how do we recover from that? How do we help some of these small businesses get back on their feet? I'm currently thinking of an opportunity in Randolph on how we can use ARPA funds to help small businesses get back on their feet. So I'm in the process of putting it together a meeting now so we could see, can we use some of this money? Because we're still, all of the towns are still trying to figure out what could they use the money for and what they can't use the money for. So we have a consultant that we're going to speak to and see how could we use the money to help small businesses. And that's not just a Randolph issue. That's not just a Brockton issue or a Whitman or a Hanson issue. That's universal. Many of these small businesses just did not do well because of COVID. That started in 2020. And I mentioned mental health, right? That's universal as well. Yep. And something that we really have to start thinking on a higher level. It's not an individual issue. I think when we think about mental health and we think about substance use, we still think about it as an individual issue, but it's a public issue. And, we need to start thinking broader about how to help these individuals who are unfortunately in these situations and how we can heal them. And once we can think of it as a public health issue and be serious about thinking about it as a public health issue, then I believe more focus could be on how we could how we could put policies in place to heal and have more resources for individuals who are having a difficult time. Again, going back to COVID, individuals with mental health issues has risen. These small businesses who have gone out of, who have lost their business because of COVID, that has become a major issue. And then, also, I'm an individual who has done a lot of work around oppression. So women's rights, rights around LGBT community, rights around race, and abilities, different abilities. So I bring all of that knowledge that I have indirectly or directly worked with to the table and understand how people are suffering and the needs that they need and the resources that need to be available.
If you're just tuning in, we are speaking with Katrina Huff Larmond. She is a candidate for state senate, and we're chatting with her about her campaign. We get a few minutes left with you, Katrina. And it was funny because I was going to mention the American Rescue Plan Act funding, the ARPA funding.
Yes.
And your thoughts on, do you feel as though that our state elected officials have done enough when it comes to fairly distributing the Commonwealth's allotment of ARPA money? And what would you like to do if you're elected when it comes to oversight for your district?
Well, I'll say I would like to work on making sure that the monies are equally divided amongst the towns. I was to tell you one thing that has happened with Randolph. There's this formula that usually happens when money comes from the federal government that goes on how many residents, how many individuals are in your town, but not what is needed. It doesn't, this formula doesn't assess your need. It assesses how many individuals are in a town or city. And that doesn't work for Randolph because, yes, Randolph has 37,000, new census coming through, individuals, but our needs are high compared to maybe some other towns. So I would definitely like to look at and make sure that the needs in each town that's in my district, they're getting the appropriate funding. And appropriate funding so they can do what is needed to continue to build the town and cities up and not be taken advantage of because of their numbers of residents are low. What are the risk factors? I want to look at the risk factors and make sure that they're receiving the monies that they're supposed to receive and receiving the resources that they're supposed to be receiving. Not saying, well, there's only like 17,000 people in this district, so therefore their needs are low. And that's not necessarily true at all. You can have a number of individuals in a place and the needs could be less than another population who have less individuals and the needs are higher.
Okay. We just got a couple of minutes left, but I got to make sure I ask in regards to local aid. I think local aid is a key, especially when it comes to making sure there's enough money for funding. We're talking Chapter 70 money. When it comes to a community being able to get Chapter 90 money, that means roads, sidewalks. Nobody likes potholes on their streets, and everybody likes to have that money to be able to kind of spruce up their communities. Talk to me about being a fighter for local aid.
Oh, absolutely. First of all, we're also waiting for infrastructure money to come down. So that's really important. And so again, we need for that formula to be accurate. And the local fundings, absolutely, because you're right. I receive more phone calls about the potholes on the streets and when will my street be paved than anything.
Care about that.
Right, absolutely. So, there's lots of energies around making sure that we have just as much of the local funding than, the larger funding, because we need to keep our we need to keep the funding coming in on a regular basis. These ARPA monies, this is just like a once in a lifetime type of situation. So yeah, we'll take it and we'll do what we're supposed to do with it, but we want to have ongoing, revenue that's coming through so we can take care of towns and cities alike, to make sure the potholes and the sidewalks and we're beautifying, along with some of the other social service programming that we're trying to do as well.
We just got a minute or two left. I want to give you an opportunity. Maybe there's something that we didn't get to ask you, but you feel is kind of key that you want to mention. And also, while you're at it, if folks want to find out more about you, they want to get involved with your campaign, how can they do that?
Thank you so much. I appreciate that. I will definitely answer that question. Again, my name's Katrina Huff Larmond. I'm running for District 34 State Senate. I'm really excited about this opportunity. This is a new district that came out of redistricting, that I was also very much involved in. And this district gives people opportunity to feel as if they can run and, in some new energies. So absolutely, I can use all the assistance that anyone could provide. I have a website, katrinaforsenate.com. Definitely visit. I have social media as well that's up. Not next week, but the week after, because next week is Easter. The week after, we'll be doing some door knocking in Brockton. If you want to join us, definitely go to the website and you'll be directed to where you can help us. You can go to contacts, leave your name, your number, your address, whatever you feel comfortable leaving, and we will connect with you. If you want to sign, if you live in Brockton, Randolph, Halifax, Hanson, East Bridgewater, Whitman, definitely connect with me. If you don't mind having a sign in your yard, that would be extremely helpful. And as we continue going, there will be phone calls and things that people can do from their home, and you don't have to go out. But as much support as I can get, I appreciate. There's so much on May 24th. We'll have a kickoff campaign in Brockton at Lawanda's. So we're excited about that.
Okay.
So again, whatever you could provide, we will take, and we'll take good care of you while we're at it.
We've been speaking with Katrina Huff Larmond, and we want to thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you. Thank you, Kevin. This has been fun. We have to do this again.
We will do it again. And we want to thank you for tuning in. You have been watching Municipal Focus. Until next time, have yourself a great day.